Hello, I thought I would do a little garden tour since people seem to like my profile picture with kind of the bird's eye view of everything we've done in the garden. And I have to say, if Adam wasn't here with his drill, his impact driver, and woodworking skills, I don't think I would have done most of any of this. So I owe a lot to his skills and strength to help build a lot of the stuff that we've got here. So let's take a look around. Let me switch this around. This is our area where we have a trellis that we built from a cattle panel. This is an 8-foot cattle panel. You can get it from Tractor Supply. I'm hoping to stake up some of the plants that are here. There's several different kinds of tomatoes. I'm doing a lot of companion planting in these containers, putting basil or parsley or flowers in with the main plant, which is usually a tomato or a pepper, in order to attract pollinators and repel pests and improve the flavor of the tomatoes. We'll see how that works out. In the back row, there's a sweet potato back there. There's a Yukon Gold right there. There's a sad-looking palm we got from Lowe's that needs some warm weather. Some flowers, parsley and leeks. My sedum, if anybody wants some sedum, I can snip off some sedum for you. You don't have to pay $5 for it at a big box store or a nursery, because that stuff is like so prolific. Another Yukon Gold potato I'm growing in a grocery bag. We have some densely sown carrots. I'll have to thin those out somehow. Got some other tomatoes. I have a combination of cherry tomatoes and some dark colored tomatoes. Cherokee Purple and Black Crim are a couple of the dark ones I'm growing. And Sun Gold is one of the cherry tomatoes that I'm growing for the first time. I'm so proud of this strawberry plant. I pulled these out of a bed at the end of the season last year because I wanted to liberate the space. And I wasn't sure how the strawberries would handle being put in a pot, but they are doing great. I've got some extra plants that are like way too leggy for solo cups, if anybody wants a tomato. Okay, so there's more tomatoes over here. This is my lettuce and greens and cilantro, parsley, chard. This chard overwintered and it's still hanging on. This was winter sown butter crunch lettuce, excuse me. We even have a lettuce in here that we rooted from a head of lettuce that came from the store. That's one of these, and it got put out in the garden. This is a mustard green called Mibuna. This is Tatsoi, which is another Asian green. And I've got some beans, some bush beans, and I stuck a pepper plant in the midst of this. And then I have another interesting mustard green. These are kind of spicy. They have a little bit of a sharp taste to them, but they're fun in salads. It's called Curly Mizuna. This is another one of my brassica beds, and it's covered with insect netting to keep the cabbage moths out. Those little white moths you see flying around, they lay eggs on any kind of brassica, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, and they will chew bunches of holes in your plants. So this year, everything's protected, but it is kind of cramped in there. I've got some dill in there. I've got another round of radishes, looking for some sunlight. This was the radish bed. Most of the radishes, the white icicle and French breakfast radishes we've picked. What is left are these watermelon radishes, and they look like they're either bolting or we pulled a couple and they are kind of fibrous, so I don't know how that's going to turn out. We've got a couple different kinds of beets, and there's a couple of Brussels sprouts that I've stuck in there. Yeah, some of these radishes are bolting, so I might let them go to seed. This is a determinate tomato that sprouted in a pot of, it was an ornamental pepper that we brought in during the winter. And all of a sudden in the springtime, these little sprouts popped up, and I was like, oh, that looks like tomato. And it's because I had this variety of determinate tomato on the patio right next to the ornamental pepper. And so as some of the fruit dropped down, it left some seeds in the ornamental pepper plant, which that didn't survive, but the seeds from the tomato did. This is a Kokuzi melon, which is a kind of loofah, and we'll see how that goes. Hopefully it's going to climb. And I've got a cucumber and a tomato, and we'll see how they make out growing together, since they both are very heavy feeders. I'll have to keep on top of fertilizing them. This is another Kokuzi. This one was I started some melon seeds like way too early, and this one was like one of the biggest ones, and I kept it, and it was like my test plant to see like how much cold nights could plants take being brought outside. So that one survived, and then this bitter melon plant is the same way. It's tough as nails. I'm hoping with warmer weather it will look a little darker green and look a little happier, but it's hanging in there. And then I put some mixed green lettuce down in the bottom. I'm kind of taking the approach of doing like living mulch at the bottom of a lot of the plants, so that like weeds won't get in. Pollinators will be attracted. I've got a marigold in here, and I got a bush bean plant in here with this cucumber. So we'll see what happens with that. And here is our cattle panel trellis that we made from cattle panel from Tractor Supply. It's a pretty inexpensive way to make a trellis. This bed has a cover on it because I'm trying to keep the cats from going in here. They've got a few flowers in there. There's some onions trying to survive. Some flowers, more beets, and then I put in a tomato and some purple basil right there. This carrot patch got dug up a little bit by the cats before I could stop them. There's some more tatsoi. This is my pepper bed, which we had to build a cage around because the cats kept pooping in there. So don't want them pooping in there. I may put some other plants in between if I can reach in there, just so that it's not naked in between the plants. But all these peppers, I kind of toughed it out. Everything was grown inside, started weeks and weeks ago, and except for the one poblano pepper in the back, which we bought from the store. But all these were started indoors under grow lights and allowed to get big enough, and then they were hardened off by weaning them into increasing amounts of time outside. But with all the weird, like, it's cold, it's warm, it's cold, it's warm, they suffered a little bit. I had to cover them a couple times at night when we had a couple late cold spells at night. So everything seems to be doing okay. There might be a little bit of stunting from the cold nights, but I think we're past all that, so it should be fine now. We've got a couple of cold-loving cabbages that survived over the winter. We had probably 4 or 5 of these variety of cabbage that we actually started in the fall, and they overwintered. We had them under cover, and a couple of them, as soon as we had, again, those weird warm, cold spells, some of them didn't know what to do, and they bolted. So these 2 did not bolt. Fortunately, I let them stay, and it looks like we might actually get cabbage. And I got some garlic in here, and there's a little dinosaur kale, which survived being stepped on by the cats before we covered this over. Got some beans in here. We're growing some sugar snap peas. Growing up this trellis. This is our second geo-bin. It's a compost bin, and we started a second one. The other one is out on the other side of the fence, so that we could keep composting all of our kitchen scraps. We eat so much green stuff that we don't throw any of that away. We recycle and we compost lots and lots of kitchen scraps. It's a great way to reduce the amount of trash that goes to the landfill, and we just, all the tops from radishes, and when I trim leaves and stuff off of the cabbages and whatnot, it all goes in here. Grass clippings. Occasionally we'll throw in some brown stuff just so that we get a balance of greens and browns, carbon and greenery. So I will show you the other compost bin. Dogs are barking. This is our other geo bin. These are nice because they are flexible in size. You can make them as big or as small as you want. You can see that this compost bin is looking pretty broken down. There's a lot of leaves in here, a lot of sticks. There's not too much recognizable plant vegetable matter. So we turn it every couple days, and I've been watering it because we're trying to get the temperature up. But I think it's heading in the right direction. We're still kind of learning about how to compost effectively. This is our outside bed, which I put in hoping that the sun, which comes across the side of the house, it hits this corner, and it seemed like a really good spot to put some sun-loving plants in here. So right now we've got sugar snap peas and snow peas, and I put this squash in here. I think it's a zucchini. This bed violates every companion planting rule because there's things you're not really supposed to grow together. But I figure the cabbage is going to come out. By the time it gets hot, the cabbage is going to come out. The beans will be here for a month or two. The peas will probably be here for a month or two. And then it'll be warm weather squash. And I might put a cucumber or something out here. These Savoy cabbages also overwintered and did not bolt. So we'll see if they actually head up. They're looking pretty nice right now. We've got wood from all of our excess projects. And let's go around this way. This is another one of our self-watering buckets. It's got a false bottom with a water reservoir that you can fill from the top if you want to. and the water just gets wicked up through there's like a wicking cup of soil that is the way the water will come up through the soil to the main reservoir where the plant is, and it keeps it more evenly moist. And there's an overflow hole so that, if it rains really hard or something, your plant won't be sitting with its roots like completely soaked, which would rot. These are a couple pepper plants, a shishito and a serrano. We'll see how they're doing. They're getting a little bigger. They were kind of small. I think the cold weather they didn't like so much. I'm growing ground cherries for the first time this year. Never heard of ground cherries, and then once I started looking at seed catalogs, I became obsessed with ground cherries. So this is one of the varieties called Aunt Molly's ground cherry, and they form these little tomato-like fruits that are actually sweeter than tomatoes, but they're in these little husks, and then they ripen and fall down to the ground. That's why they're called ground cherries. But I'm looking forward to that. This is my sage plant, which has been here for many years, and a eucalyptus, which is actually now a tree. Excuse me, that I bought from Benke's when it was just a little itty bitty plant, and I had no idea it was going to make a tree. And this is our chamomile, which is starting to, actually it's going to flower. I might have made it too crowded, so I don't know. It's taking its sweet time. The other thing we're doing is these grow bags that I saw at Frank's nursery. They have flowers in them, and they're just these vertical bags, and you fill them with soil, and you can poke little seedlings through these holes. And I decided to try lettuce in this. So I found these bags on Amazon. Frank's wasn't really selling the bags themselves. They had flowers in the bags. Here's a nasturtium, which is supposed to be good for attracting pollinators and protecting your plant from harmful insects. And this is my other brassica bed, which is covered also with netting. Got some red acre cabbage in here. Got some lettuces. One of the lettuces I harvested. We do cut and come again, so we will wait and see if this lettuce comes back right there. And got some radishes going. This bed used to be a flower bed, and this lily had not bloomed in I don't know how many years, and just I think in the process of turning the bed and turning the soil and fertilizing really, really well, the lily bulb decided to bloom again. This is more Mabuna greens. We've got some kale and Brussels sprouts. I think it's Brussels sprouts or broccoli. I always forget. I've moved some stuff around. My cats keep trying to get in here. This is purple kohlrabi. I've never grown purple kohlrabi before, so we'll see how that goes. There's another bean plant. And a lettuce in containers is doing really great. I grow oregano in a pot because it can be really, really invasive, and it's easier to control if you just keep it contained in a pot. This is our asparagus bed. It's our second year with asparagus, and it overwintered very well, but it's still a little too skinny to harvest. So we'll give it another year, and then hopefully we'll get some thicker. You can see the little asparagus, but they were really too skinny to actually eat. But asparagus is definitely a long-term project, so wherever you put it, you have to leave it. Here's some more ground cherries with a few zinnias that I put in there. Here's another vertical growing strategy. I got these pots from the Dollar Tree, dollar a level. Like almost cleaned them out when they had them. And then Adam drilled a bunch more holes so that we would have even drainage from top to bottom, and then drilled a hole through all of them so that we could put a PVC pipe through it to keep it more stable. So it's looking pretty good. Some of the layers are a little bit dry. The whole thing needs to be watered, but it's been really good for greens. I highly recommend grow towers for growing your greens. It doesn't tie up a horizontal bed space. It's a good way of growing greens because they don't have very deep roots. They don't need very much soil for their roots. And so it's really good for growing things like arugula or spinach, and you can just snip off what you want for your breakfast or your lunch. I've put a few little flowers in there to attract pollinators. Some kale, some beautiful red romaine, some purple bok choy, chard. It's a really great way to grow greens in a small footprint. Highly recommend it. There's another strawberry tower. This was some of my other strawberries that I moved. This strawberry, I'd never seen pink strawberry flowers before, but we got this plant from the store, and we'll see what the strawberries end up being like. Go around here. This is our other tomato bed, and we've got this, what might seem like a little bit overkill, but tomato plants can get really, really bushy. They can get really tall. They can lean over. So this year we've got these stakes with a horizontal post so that I can tie some strings from the plants. And I'm also going to do something called a Florida weave, which you tie twine from one end of the stake around one side of this tomato plant and then around the other side of that tomato plant. And you just keep, as the plants grow, you just keep wrapping back and forth. So it keeps the plants kind of contained between the twine. So we'll see how that goes. And in the back row, there's all these things that will grow vertically. We get a lot of sun on this bed. So this side of the cattle panel will be very, very sunny. And so I think all of the cucumbers, and this is a loofah, which my loofah plant doesn't look too happy, but I think the new growth is still alive, so I've got a backup plant if that one doesn't work out. And then this is a squash, yellow squash. So we'll see how much that one will spread. They can kind of get out of control. So it's going to probably be kind of a jungle here after too long. We'll see what happens with all these plants. My tomatoes look like they're a little chilly right now. They could use some water. So we'll see. That is about everything. I've got some extra plants. Here's our little greenhouse. It's a tiny little greenhouse, but it's been highly effective. We grew lettuce in this all winter long. It stayed mostly around 40 or 50 degrees, which was really good for growing lettuce. It's been really good for a place to put our plants as we've begun to harden off things from growing inside the house and getting them used to being outside and getting regular sunlight. This is a milkweed cutting that I got from a park, and I don't think it's going to survive. It was probably not the best strategy. I've got some extra tomato plants. I've got some extra purple tomatillo plants. I've got cucamelon. I'm going to grow cucamelon. They're these little tiny cucumber-like fruits that look like little tiny watermelons. And I've got some flowers that I'm growing, and some eggplants, and some these are all kind of backup plants. This is our watercress. We've got some extra ground cherries. So that is about for the garden tour. So I hope that gives you a little bit more detail on what we've all got going on in here. I'm not one of those like daily, video bloggers, Instagram, gotta post every single thing I do in the garden. I don't really have time for it. I'd rather just be out here and do it. But I realize there might be some people interested in seeing a little bit more up close what we've done in the yard. So this is a long video. You can watch it or not watch it. I won't be offended either way. So thanks for watching. Click and subscribe.